I'm Rolene Marks. Welcome to Modi'in and Beyond. Join me every Sunday between 3 and 4 on Radio Modi'in as we take a look at what's happening in Modi'in, Israel and beyond. It's that time of the week where you join me, Rolene Marks, on Radio Modi'in for Modi'in and Beyond, where we take a look at what's happening in our beautiful city of Modi'in, Israel, and beyond the borders. And I'm delighted today to be joined in studio by Janice, Cohen and Shira Frohlinger. They recently volunteered for the Zoe project in Cape Town, South Africa. We're going to be catching up with them. We're also going to be chatting to Maurice Hirsch. We're going to be unpacking last week's Operation Shield and Arrow, how it started, how it went, what were the main takeaways from that. And of course, the Queen of Entertainment, Yael, Kinar, will be up later in the show to tell us about the latest in the world of entertainment. All this and the best music. And remember, if you want to advertise your business or your services, be in touch with us via our website at www.radiomodi'in.co.il or via the Facebook page, or hey, even through me, Rolene Marks. But a huge welcome to the studio to Janice Cohen and Shira Frohlinger. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you for having us.
Good to have you here. Now, you've both recently returned from South Africa. You volunteered for the Zoe project. Now, this sounds absolutely incredible. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Zoe project is and what made you want to volunteer all the way in South Africa?
Okay, so the Zoe project was founded in 1998 to help support vulnerable women, girls, babies in the Western Cape. It's a group of volunteers that volunteer as doulas, antenatal counselors, postnatal counselors, and they basically help women in the MOUs, which are the midwifery obstetric units in Cape Town, as well as in Mowbray Maternity Hospital, which is one of the main maternity hospitals in Cape Town. About a year ago, I met with a good friend of mine in Cape Town, and she told me that she was starting to volunteer for the Zoe project. And it kind of got me interested because I work as a doula in Israel. And for some reason, I just knew Shira was the right person. And I phoned Shira and I said, do you want to do this? And she said yes.
Yeah, it just happened.
So you midwives and doulas. I love me a midwife. I think that you do.
So we're not midwives.
So Janice is a doula. I love babies. And we actually met, Janice was my doula when I had my third child, when I moved to Israel. So we met with her as my doula, and we just kind of bonded over this shared love of babies and pregnancy and everything that has to do with that.
And it's especially important to go to places like South Africa where women don't have access to the medical care that so many of us take for granted. Can you explain to our listeners and to me, what is the difference between a midwife and a doula?
So a midwife is a nurse, somebody who studied to become a nurse, and then she's done a midwifery course. So she's a medical professional. She works in the hospital and she can deliver babies and do antenatal care and postnatal care from a medical point of view as well. A doula is more of a support person. The word doula is actually a Greek word. It means to help another woman, and that's basically what we do. We support women throughout their pregnancies, during birth and after birth, but not from the medical side of things. We're not allowed to do anything medical, but we are there for emotional support and physical support as much as we can do.
Hugely, hugely important. Now, you're going to a place like Cape Town, South Africa. I'm sure you visited the townships in and around Cape Town, where people live in very, very different circumstances to the way that we live here. What was some of the reactions you received, and what were some of the challenges that you faced working or volunteering in South Africa?
So we weren't in the townships as such, but we were based in Mowbray, which is the government maternity hospital. So the women who go to Mowbray Maternity Hospital are either women who are having high-risk pregnancies, or women who live in the area, and often women who are transferred from the MOUs to Mowbray for various things. So the women who are there, many of them don't come with very much. And it was quite an eye-opener for us to see, just to see so much. We saw poverty, we saw happiness, sadness, gratitude, so much gratitude. You give somebody a bottle of water and they're just so happy, or you give them a little chocolate and they smile for the rest of the day. There's some women who come in without clothes and blankets to take their babies home in. And that was one of the things that we tried to do before we left, was to gather donations, to collect donations to help supply them with some of the things that they need.
It's a huge life lesson for all of us, because I think so many of us take for granted what we have here and in many places around the world. If we need medical care, or we can just go to Terem, we can go to the doctor or the emergency room without a second thought. You know, one of the joys that many mothers face is buying all the clothes and all the decor for a baby room, forgetting that there are women in some parts of the world who have absolutely nothing and are grateful for every little bit. Shira, I can hear by your accent that you are not South African.
I'm not, I'm Canadian.
What were you expecting going to South Africa? What kind of vision did you have in your mind's eye about a place like South Africa?
I mean, the truth is I didn't really know what to expect, because I'm not in the birthing rooms and in labors in general, the same way Janice is. I do have 3 kids, so I did experience birth from that end. But it was hugely eye-opening, even from something as basic as many women come without spouses, partners. You know, they're there alone, laboring for hours and hours, completely alone, which to me was one of the harder things to see, because it should be such a joyful, wonderful time. And being there and able to support them, you know, even to just hold this woman's hand while she's going through a contraction is, you know, afterwards, after that baby's born, they look you in the eye and they say, thank you for being here. And to me, that was just, it blew me away, because I mean, Janice does this on a regular basis, but to be with somebody when they're in such a vulnerable position was a privilege, really.
I love that. I love that you call it a privilege, because to be of service to people really is a privilege that many of us are able to have. And some of the challenges, I mean, you're going to a part of the world that might not necessarily have all the equipment, that there might be cultural differences. What were some of the challenges that you faced?
So we were in a hospital, so they did have equipment, but they didn't have things like they have here. Women can't get an epidural when they want an epidural. Some of the medical supplies, you know, if somebody needed certain things, we had to look for supplies. But the hospital were amazing. The midwives, the doctors, the nurses, the midwives and nurses work 12-hour shifts from 7 to 7. They work extremely hard. And they're so dedicated. They really, really give these women what they can. And that's where the Zoe project comes in, because they fill in the gaps. So what the midwives don't have time to do, I'm sure they would love to, but they just don't have time to give the woman the extra support, that extra hug, that extra massage on the back, just looking them in the eyes and helping them breathe. Those type of things, the midwives just don't have time for that, and that's where the Zoe volunteers come in, and that was really beautiful to see. And we just left there, our hearts are so full, and it was really, as Shira said, it was a privilege to be with them.
Now, South Africa is a country that is quite hostile to Israel, not South Africans, but the South African government. Was there any reaction to hearing that you were from Israel, or did it just make absolutely no difference?
I felt like it made no difference. All of the volunteers would introduce us as Shira and Janice. They've come from Israel to volunteer. And I felt that people were very welcoming.
Yeah.
People, wow, you flew so far to come and help me, and between the midwives, between the other volunteers, even, the ladies, they, we weren't really sure what to expect. Every time they said they came from Israel, I kind of flinched a little bit. But I felt absolutely no hostility at all.
In fact, quite the opposite.
Yeah, absolute gratitude.
Welcoming. And what were some of your high points? What were some of your highlights of your trip?
We spent some time in the nursery, which is a room for up to 6 babies at a time that are in the social care system. So they're either babies that have been given up, or they're babies that their mothers are going through the social workers before they can go home with their mothers. And I actually thought I'd want to spend more time in there with them. I went with the intention of just spending time with these babies. But being in the labor room and watching, life happen, whether it was a hard, transition or hard labor, or some of them were very easy, to me that was just absolutely incredible to watch.
A miracle. It really is. When we speak about the miracles of childbirth, bringing new life into the world, and it absolutely is a miracle. And you, what are your lasting memories and impressions?
Wow, so many. It was very interesting for me to learn how things work there, because I only know how things work in Israel. It was interesting for me to support a woman without knowing her beforehand, because I normally know the women that I work with. But after a few hours, you just kind of get into it, and you realize that all these women need is support and love. And as soon as you just open your heart and let go, and you're just present, it was amazing. It was very, very special.
If you had a message to any young woman out there who maybe wants to volunteer or wants to help, and you've come from South Africa, a place that's not known to be warm and accepting of Israel from a government perspective, what would your message to anybody who would maybe like to volunteer for the Zoe Project be?
I would say just go in with an open heart. I was afraid, coming with no real doula background, that, what was I going to do? How helpful could I actually be? But going in and just truly wanting to help, even without so much experience, whether it was just rubbing a woman's back or holding her hand or just breathing with her. You don't need a ton of experience to do that. You just need to truly want to help. So I think anybody who does want to do that can absolutely do it.
And just follow your dreams. We had this crazy idea that we actually didn't even know if it would turn into reality, and it did. So if you have an idea, if you have something in your heart, if there's something that you want to do, just follow your dreams and try and make it happen, and it can come true.
And you did it with the absolute purest of intentions, which I believe is always what takes a project or a dream forward, is to do it with the clearest and kindest of intentions. Now, if you want to be in touch or learn more about the Zoe Project, you can follow their Facebook page at the Zoe Project. I did check out a website yesterday. I know it's under construction, but it is thezoeproject.co.za. Do they take any donations for baby clothes, anything that baby needs, so people from here can donate? Because let's not kid it, I think over 5 rand to the shekel, a shekel can go a long way to helping to give a mommy and a baby what they need. I have been speaking to Shira Frohlinger and Janice Cohen, both who volunteered magnificently, represented Israel in Cape Town at the Zoe Project. Ladies, thank you so much for coming to chat to me this morning. I'm Rolene Marks. This is Modi'in and Beyond. And on the other side of this music break, Advocate Maurice Hirsch and I are going to be unpacking Operation Shield and Arrow.
מרגישה שנפתח לה מזל, פגשה אחד גבר ורז'ל, והיא תלחש לו, מה היא תלחש לו, קח אותי על הגמל. I'm your beauty, you're my beast, welcome to the Middle East. תל אביב, יא חביבי תל אביב, תסתכל כמה לירדים מסביב, עושים לי היי היי בלילה וואי וואי, וסחטן על תל אביב. תל אביב, יא חביבי תל אביב, תסתכל כמה לירדים מסביב, עושים לי היי היי בלילה וואי וואי, וסחטן על תל אביב. זורחת שמש בעיר הלבנה, ומועצים בו מבט מכל פינה, והיא יודעת, מה היא יודעת, הוא יברח לה עוד שנייה. I'm your beauty, you're my beast, welcome to the Middle East. תל אביב, יא חביבי תל אביב, תסתכל כמה לירדים מסביב, עושים לי היי היי בלילה וואי וואי, וסחטן על תל אביב. תל אביב, יא חביבי תל אביב, תסתכל כמה לירדים מסביב, עושים לי היי היי בלילה וואי וואי, וסחטן על תל אביב. עולה לי עולה לי עולה ולא יורד לי, 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 ולא יורד לי ולא יורד לי ולא יורד לי. תל אביב, יא חביבי תל אביב, תסתכל כמה לירדים מסביב, עושים לי היי היי בלילה וואי וואי, וסחטן על תל אביב. תל אביב, יא חביבי תל אביב, תסתכל כמה לירדים מסביב, עושים לי היי היי בלילה וואי וואי.
Tel Aviv, ya habibi, Tel Aviv. Omer Adams, my engineer, Pe'er, is laughing at me. He says he's never seen such a diverse playlist in his life. You're with me, Rolene Marks. This is Modi'in and Beyond on Radio Modi'in. And I'm delighted to be welcomed, or to welcome rather, my good friend, Advocate Maurice Hirsch from Palestinian Media Watch. Maurice, welcome again to Modi'in and Beyond. I've missed you.
Hi, Boker Tov. How are you doing? It's good to be back with you again.
Excellent, excellent. Now, last week, the IDF launched Operation Shield and Arrow in response to over 100 rockets fired from the Gaza Strip by terror organization Palestinian Islamic Jihad towards Israeli citizens. Now, let's take a look at the operation, Maurice. What actually started this whole conflagration besides the rockets that were fired from Gaza 2 weeks ago?
So I think we have to say that really the cause of the operation were the rockets fired. Obviously, the terrorists would try and give a different answer. They would say that they were just responding to the death of the terrorist Khadir Adnan from his hunger strike in an Israeli prison, and therefore exercising their right of to really try and murder Israelis because some terrorist decided to kill himself in prison. That's what they would try and argue, but really I think the cause, at least for Israel's response, should be very simple. If you attack a sovereign country with even one missile, that's already considered in international law an armed attack. That is sufficient justification to go for an all-out war. And so when these terrorists fire over 108, if I'm not mistaken, 104, 108 missiles indiscriminately targeting Israel's civilian population. So Israel is well within its right to defend itself and to launch that all-out attack against the aggressors and against the terrorists.
Now, what is interesting is the anti-Israel detractors will say these are not proper rockets and missiles. They have no guidance systems on board. You know, they call them fireworks for want of a better word, but let's make no mistake. These are 108 war crimes fired from within their civilian infrastructure towards our civilians. Now, for people who might not understand, because Gaza is a very complex place. Most people, when they think of Gaza, think of Hamas. But who exactly is Palestinian Islamic Jihad?
So Palestinian Islamic Jihad is one of the smaller terrorist organizations within the context of the Palestinian terrorist organizations. It's actually one of the, it's probably the third biggest after Mahmoud Abbas's Al-Aqsa Martyr Brigades. Then you have Hamas. Then you have Palestinian Islamic Jihad. And really on their skirt tails comes along the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine. And even after that, the Democratic Front for the Liberation of Palestine. They are an organization that doesn't seem to have any type of political aspirations whatsoever. They are not part of the Palestinian political picture. They are not jockeying between Hamas and Fatah for control of the Palestinian Authority or for leadership positions within the Palestinian political system. Their sole and only goal in the world is to destroy Israel. That's what they do, and therefore it's not unsurprising that whenever they can, they carry out these attacks against Israel's civilian populations. They constantly use the rhetoric similar to Hamas, obviously, and Abbas, of referring to all of Israel as occupied territory and all Israelis, no matter where they live, no matter what their political outlook may be, whether they be left-wing or right-wing. In the eyes of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, we're all Jews are settlers and need to be eradicated. All of the area in the Middle East, really, the whole area of the Middle East is Islamic waqf, is an Islamic indemnity and endowment, and therefore it can never be given away to anyone else and never come under the jurisdiction or sovereignty of anyone else. That's their ideology: kill the Jews and destroy Israel.
And they're also Iranian backed.
It's it's everyone in the picture. They don't really care who they kill. In all honesty, as we saw, they killed an Arab from Gaza. That also makes them happy.
But their funding they receive from Iran.
Their funding comes predominantly from Iran. Iran is their main patron. They have their own independent local source of income. Protection and donations and other terror supporting charities, but predominantly their funding comes from Iran. Yes.
Now, what is very interesting, and according to Prime Minister Netanyahu, is we managed to basically eradicate their top leadership and a significant chunk of their infrastructure. I think the IDF had it at 700 terror targets had been struck by the Israeli Air Force, the IDF. And what I find particularly fascinating is that Hamas stayed pretty much out of the fray during these last couple of days. What do you make of that? Why would Hamas not want to get involved?
So Hamas has its own goals. They don't want to be dragged after Palestinian Islamic Jihad into this fight. If they are going to use violence, as they often have done, they will use it as Clausewitz, the famous military commentator, said that the war is just the continuation of politics in with violent means. That's Hamas's ideology. They will use violence and force and attack Israel when it is politically expedient for them. When they see that they need to prove points to the Palestinian population against Fatah, against Abu Mazen, then they will turn in the direction of violence. We saw this 2 years ago, also this period of time, just coming up to Yom Yerushalayim, where Mahmoud Abbas cancelled the elections that he had called for a few months before. Hamas, who was certain of an electoral victory, were obviously annoyed, and so they started firing missiles, if you remember, on the 10th of May 2021 at Jerusalem, and that started a whole another war there. So Hamas really isn't interested in getting into these petty fights with the Palestinian Islamic Jihad. In the last year, they've had a tremendous boost in their economy. Israel has been playing into that narrative, allowing just in the first 3 months of this year, 150,000 entries from Gaza into Israel. The economy in Gaza at the moment is really, in relative terms, booming. Recent statistics showed that there was even a drop in the level of unemployment in Gaza and a rise in the salaries. So Hamas at the moment is managing to take all of these steps by the international community and Israel and turn them into political capital towards their next re-election. They understand that Abbas will die soon, and they are setting themselves up as they won the last elections in 2006. They are now guaranteeing themselves also the next elections, and therefore their considerations are different from those of Palestinian Islamic Jihad, because they actually do have political aspirations and this idea that if they can take over the Palestinian Authority by albeit so-called democratic means, then that's obviously preferable. And why waste that capital getting into a small-time fight now when they could possibly wait until Thursday, Yom Yerushalayim, and say, look, we're the ones defending Al-Aqsa again. No reason for them to be necessarily dragged behind a Palestinian Islamic Jihad.
I was actually going to ask you that because we are approaching Yom Yerushalayim, the flag march. The Prime Minister has said the flag march will take its route through its traditional derech, through its traditional route, through the Muslim quarter, and the Hamas have very much used that rhetoric of defending Al-Aqsa to boost their support. Should we be very aware that there could be some possible flare-up coming this week?
So that's really a question that Prime Minister Netanyahu already answered this morning, where he warned that if the terrorists were to think about raising their head against the celebrations for Yom Yerushalayim, then every terrorist would pay with his life. I think that a statement like that wouldn't be said out of context, and I think there's probably real information that indicates that the terrorists do have an intention to try and disrupt the Israeli celebrations. So that's something that we definitely do need to take into account.
Let's take a look at the international reaction. Something that really stood out for me last week was a joint statement between Jordan, Egypt, France and Germany. They referred to stopping the bloodletting. I have a huge problem with countries like Germany and France using terminology when Israel is included in the conversation, terminology such as bloodletting. Let's take a look at the response, because we did see countries come out, and on the one hand, we've got Germany's ambassador to Israel supporting our right to self-defense, and on the other hand, we have this accusation of bloodletting I find highly, highly problematic.
So we do really have to look at the spectrum of responses from the international community. I would, by the way, just give no credit to the statement of Germany's ambassador to Israel about our right to self-defense just a week after he'd participated in an alternative Remembrance Day ceremony where he compared or tacitly participated in comparing Jewish victims of terror to Arab terrorists. So I wouldn't rush to give that any real credence. But you're right. I think that the response of the international community always trying to draw a parallel. Well, we're calling for calm in the entire region. We're calling for both sides to de-escalate the situation. You have people like Tor Renisland, the UN Secretary General's special representative for peace for the Middle East, who really was exposed in his moral depravity, condemning, as he said, the deaths, the civilian deaths in Gaza, which were caused incidentally to attacking real military targets, but silent entirely, not a word of condemnation about the fact that Palestinian terrorists used Palestinian civilians to shoot missiles from urban areas in Gaza, indiscriminately targeting Israel's civilian population. That really is just simple moral depravity. It's something which should not really be tolerated, but unfortunately we do, and we continuously see these expressions of parallelism between Israel and the terrorists. We didn't start the war; they started the war, and that simple fact needs to be taken into account. And unfortunately, most of the statements just call for general calm and de-escalation. It's so nice. Like on the other side, as opposed to Israel, there's this a cultured organization that respects the laws of war and isn't trying to just murder any Israeli on the way. That's not the case. You're talking about terrorists who are simply trying to murder Jews, and asking them to de-escalate the situation is like asking Hitler to close the gas chambers. It's absolutely absurd, and it's something which really does show that unfortunately most of these countries have completely lost their moral direction.
There is absolutely no moral equivalency between terror organizations shooting at civilians from within their civilian infrastructure. Terrorist organizations, which incidentally are prescribed in most of these countries, and the state of Israel. I did enjoy former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett putting a journalist from CNN squarely in her place for drawing a moral equivalent, saying that we will absolutely not apologize for defending our citizens. But also a rare victory at the United Nations, not getting the Security Council to make a statement on Operation Shield and Arrow, which I see as a victory at the UN.
That really was a victory at the UN. Albeit a very, very sad victory, that there was no clear condemnation also of the terrorists coming out from the UN organizations. That's something which should clearly be said, that this is unsufferable, intolerable, and terrorists need to be fought on every level. There are literally hundreds of UN resolutions that address the subject of combating terrorism, actively preventing incitement, actively stopping terror funding, and all of those decisions obviously derogate from the Palestinians and their cause to attack Israel, to fund terrorism, and to actively participate in terrorism. There you see, sadly, tremendous silence from all of the UN organizations. Really today, we're seeing that whole process again of how actually the UN turns reality on its head by saying that even Palestinian miners who were killed trying to attack Israelis, trying to murder Israelis, well, Israel killed too many of these attackers, and therefore Israel should be blacklisted by the UN Secretary General. Imagine that you're defending yourself against an attack by a terrorist. Just remember, obviously, that a knife and a gun doesn't care how old the person swinging the gun is or swinging the knife is. As we saw just recently, 12-year-olds shooting Israelis, 13-year-olds stabbing Israelis. And so when the UN then turns those Palestinian terrorists into victims of the self-defense, victims of Jews having the audacity to defend themselves and defend their rights and defend their lives even, that's something which is unfortunately far too characteristic of the UN, and therefore really it is whilst it is an achievement that we didn't receive another condemnation from the UN, it's something which unfortunately is just something which we had come to expect. Obviously the Jews will be condemned for having the audacity to defend themselves.
I mean, I found it quite ironic because the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, and a delegation of UN ambassadors were actually in the country when this started to happen. You would think that having experienced for themselves, they would have a greater understanding. But staying with the UN yesterday, an absolute aberration of morals to have Mahmoud Abbas stand there on Nakba Day and call Israel Nazis, liken us to telling lies like Goebbels, and saying that we should be expelled from the United Nations. I mean, if that, and I know that many countries boycotted the Nakba Day events, kol hakavod to them, but if this does not clearly and unequivocally give you an idea of who we are dealing with, I don't know what else is. I mean, Francesca Albanese, this is polite radio, so I won't say what I'm really thinking. She must have been absolutely ecstatic when Abbas made that comment yesterday.
Unbelievable. That little Jew hate fest that was conducted yesterday in the UN was just a shameful event from start to finish. When you have Mahmoud Abbas making unbelievable claims. The Jews have been digging on the Temple Mount, but have never found any resemblance or proof of their past history there. He should open the Muslim Supreme Council pamphlet, tourist guide from 1924, which says that this is the unequivocal site where Solomon's temple stood. This guy is just really his doctorate in Holocaust denial plays into his whole speech yesterday, connecting the Palestinians of today to the Canaanites of 5,000 years ago without any proof, denying Israel's right to exist, denying every single one of the international decisions that have been taken to establish Israel, rewriting history, saying, well, the Arabs agreed to peace. Well, when did they agree to peace? They've never agreed to peace. The only peace that they agreed to is Israel's destruction. But for Mahmoud Abbas to get the world platform to spew his evil Jew hatred, that I can definitely agree. Francesca Albanese was probably ecstatic watching every moment, and now she'll use those words to again restart her renewed attack on the Jewish people.
Maurice, before I let you go, I have a question coming in from a listener. Any thoughts on the elections in Turkey?
So I think the elections in Turkey are something which could possibly affect us. Erdogan has been someone who has been very problematic from either side, supporting the terrorists and the whole idea of the flotillas on the one hand, supporting Hamas, hosting Hamas leaders. On the other hand, trying to get to some type of rapprochement with Israel and to improve.
That's Advocate Maurice Hirsch there. I'm Rolene Marks. This is Modi'in and Beyond on Radio Modi'in. On the other side of Blake Shelton, we have the Queen of Entertainment, Yael Kinar.
Got a deed to the land, but it ain't my ground. This is God's country. We pray for rain and thank Him when it's falling, 'cause it brings a grain and a little bit of money. We put it back in the plate. I guess that's why they call it God's country. I saw the light in a sunrise, sitting back in a 40 on the muddy riverside, getting baptized in holy water and shine with the dogs running. Saved by the sound of a pin-found Dixie whistle in the wind, that'll get you heaven bound. The devil went down to Georgia, but he didn't stick around. This is God's country. We turn the dirt and work until the week's done. We take a break and break bread on Sunday, then do it all again, 'cause we're proud to be from God's country. I saw feet deep in God's country. Getting baptized in holy water and shine with the dogs running. Saved by the sound of a fin-found Dixie whistle in the wind that'll get you heaven bound. The devil went down to Georgia, but he didn't stick around. This is God's country. Yeah, I saw the light in a sunrise sitting back in the 40 on the muddy riverside, getting baptized in holy water.
Lake Shelton and God's country. If you could only see the dancing that happens behind the scenes with engineer and also manager of the radio station, Per Atya and I. Yeah, maybe some things are better not seen. But I'm Rolene Marks. This is Modi'in and Beyond on Radio Modi'in. Just a reminder, if you want to advertise your business, please be in touch with us via our website at www.radiomodi'in.co.il. But there's only one of her. She's the queen of entertainment. She is the lady we look forward to every single week, Yael Kinar. Welcome back, honey.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
Always, always good to chat to you. Now, so much to talk about this week. Last week, as we left off, we were on a cliffhanger. Eurovision, who's going to win? How will our unicorn do? And the competitions come and gone. Sweden has won. Kolla Kavod. Our wonderful Noah coming in third. But to me, Eurovision belonged to somebody who did a 9-second cameo.
I wonder if you could be referring to a certain piano savant who's already surprised us in the past with a moment like this. Our beloved Kate Middleton, multi-talented, multi-gorgeous, multi-fabulous, and also a bit of a musician.
Who'd have thunk it? There she was, Kate Middleton, now known as the Princess of Wales, playing with, I think it was a Ukrainian orchestra, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. There were a lot of sort of tributes to the Ukraine, and Ukraine did win last year and was unable to host the competition, which traditionally the winning country is the host. But due to certain Putin-esque moments, they were unable to host the competition, and Liverpool hosted them instead. But there was a lot of solidarity and support for Ukraine. And I think it's always sort of titillating to have that crossover where the royals are so controlled and our access is so limited. And when they cross over into pop culture, we welcome them with open arms.
Now let's just talk for a second about her dress. Beautiful one-shouldered blue dress. But apparently, I mean, I didn't know this. Apparently, there is a moratorium on one-shouldered blue dresses because her sister-in-law, whose name shall not be mentioned, wore one once. Apparently now no one is ever allowed to wear a blue one-shouldered dress, according to her rabid fans.
Rolene, we know our stance is very clear on which team our loyalties remain. And the criticism was that when a certain Meghan wore a one-shoulder dress, she got a lot of flack saying that isn't royal, that's Hollywood, we don't show skin, it's not done. And then when Kate does it, everyone applauds. I'm applauding. So, sorry, not sorry. I mean, more than one woman can wear a similar looking dress. As Us Weekly magazine traditionally has taught us over the years who wore it best. It happens. Sometimes celebrities, even at the Met Gala recently, two women walked in with the same dress, one black, one white. And we do sort of have our opinions and have our favorites. I don't think one is related to the other. I certainly don't think Meghan is the source of fashion inspiration for Kate. However, there was also a shoe incident last week, so a day before the coronation, when Kate went on a walkabout wearing shoes that have a little bow on the back that Meghan wore before. It's okay, girls, ladies, lovers. There's enough fashion for everyone. We will share.
There's enough to go around for everyone. And just to remind people taking stock, Her Majesty the Queen, the late Queen, also used to wear one-shouldered dresses, as did Princess Diana and has Princess Catherine in the past. We know these things. We watch very carefully. Now, you and I are connoisseurs of something really, really important and great, and in my opinion, timeless in the world of entertainment, and that is the Real Housewives franchise.
This is true, but I must just tell you that I'm not yet done with our homage to the Eurovision, because I have my own private personal star, and I know we all support Noah Kiril, and her third place is very respectable in my opinion, especially with the whole political climate, which shouldn't cross over into music, but it does, and I did not think that she would be able to win first place, regardless of her song and her performance, because #Israel. However, the hostess, Hannah Waddingham, who is new to some people, she's not new to, I mean, she's been an actress, theater performer for many, many years. Some people know her from Game of Thrones. I'm exposed to her more lately due to Ted Lasso. But I thought she did a fantastic job. She was statuesque.
She was outstanding.
She's beautiful and sort of over-the-top camp, enjoys it, multilingual, a little bit of French, some Italian, English, comedy, humor, fashion. I have to say, she added a lot of extra zhuzh to the event. In my opinion, I'm not a huge Eurovision person, sorry. I found that it's gone over the top in a direction that isn't, I don't know, I'm not into it too long, too much. But I really enjoyed seeing her there, and I thought she should get an honorable mention here on our little section of the universe.
Well, Eurovision does have more cheese than a fromagerie, but we do love Hannah Waddingham, and have you heard her sing?
Tremendous. Everything she does is pleasantly surprising. Her acting is great. Her singing is excellent. Her multilingual talents are impressive. Fashion choices I support. Welcome to my life, Hannah.
Hannah, if you're watching...
Late, but I'm glad to have discovered her a few decades after she's actually been discovered.
Hannah, if you're watching, we are #Hannah Waddingham. And if you do watch Game of Thrones, you will know her as the... I think she was one of the scepters that walked behind Cersei when she did her walk of shame with the bell going shame, shame, shame. That was Hannah Waddingham, for those unwatched.
But back to our housewives. I'm sorry for the turn. I felt like she needed to be showcased.
Okay, I've got a viewer question.
Yes.
They sent me a picture of the winner of Eurovision with her nails, with a question: can you talk to her about the nails of Freddy Krueger's wife?
Oh, yeah, those are the parts of the Eurovision that resonate with me less. I understand it's a party and everybody needs attention and everyone is borderline costuming, and I don't know. I don't have anything nice to say about the nails, and so I suppose I shouldn't say anything at all. What did you think, Rolene?
Not my thing. I'm not a big fan of the stiletto nails, and when they're the stiletto nails on overdrive, I'm less of a fan. I mean, I have a few for Sean don'ts. Stiletto nails, especially ridiculous ones, bad hair extensions, and over-processed faces. What are some of your fashion no-nos?
Oh my goodness. I will just say that the nails, before we close that chapter, I think it's also a reflection of lifestyle, and that some of these long nail ladies or men are showing us that they're not really doing a lot of dishes or laundry. There's not a lot of activities in their lives that require to keep their nails at a sensible length, and therefore there's part of me that looks at it wistfully. It's not the look that I want, but I feel like that kind of nail comes with some house staff support, and I can only just envy that. But yeah, there's some. Yeah, we've had our moments of criticizing the trying too hard bunch and the too short and too tight, and I don't know. There's nothing specific that comes to mind because I do like to see the trends and get a feeling of what's what's happening, a lot of those trends we wouldn't personally adopt ourselves.
She is the lady that brings a smile to our faces every single week, the queen of entertainment, because we crown her so, and she really is Yael Kinar. Thank you to my guests, Shira Frohlinger, Janice, Cohen, advocate Maurice Hirsch. Thank you to Pe'er Atia behind the scenes, commenting on my playlist, because we like to keep it diverse. Thank you to you, the listeners, and I'm Rolene Marks. Join me again next week for Modi'in and Beyond on Radio Modi'in, and have yourselves a wonderful rest of your day.